ladies and gentlemen. It's our Ukraine-Russia-China show on IBM Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star. I would like to introduce our panelist for today, Mr. Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hi, everyone.
And a retired Colonel Chris Grekov from United States. Welcome to the show, Chris.
How you doing there, Sasha? Hi, Ivan.
Okay, great. Let's discuss the very latest news on Ukraine. So we all know about this visit of prime ministers or presidents of France, Germany, Romania, Italy to Kiev. Ivan, what do you expect from this visit, and what are the latest news, and what are your thoughts on that?
Actually, we expected the worst due to the well-known position of Chancellor Scholz and Prime Minister of Italy, Draghi, and President Macron. We expected that they will come here to persuade Ukraine actually to trade our territories currently being occupied by Russia, like 20% of occupied territories, in exchange of probably some weapons or in exchange of the candidate status of Ukraine to the European Union. But according to the press conference and according to their statements, they support Ukraine. They don't demand some steps from Ukraine, like to help Russia and to help Putin to save his face. So they support the sovereignty and the actual territories, official territory of Ukraine, counting also the currently occupied territories. And Macron also announced that we will got additional shipment of Caesar howitzers, which are actually very good. I think that Chris can confirm it. I've seen several videos from the battlefield and some feedback from Ukrainian soldiers, from Ukrainian artillery guys, and pretty excited about those Caesar howitzers because they're completely automized. They're completely very precise weapon and long range, which is actually very needed to our army because of the actually of the comparison of our armaments, the quantity of our artillery towards the Russian one. So
Okay.
the news are quite good and quite positive for all Ukrainians, and we're here inspired.
Okay, Chris, what's your opinion on that subject?
So, a couple of things. First of all, I wanted to add with Ivan on the howitzers and what's going on there. I do notice one thing is that it looks like Americans are going over there to Ukraine to help with the fighting, and they're getting captured, or they think they're getting captured by the Russians. I'm an American, and I get this. Hey, if I were a young pup and I understood weapons, I'd go over there too and fight. But man, I'll tell you, getting captured by the Russians as a U.S. individual, I don't know what they're going to do. One, what they're going to do to those people when they get them, and two is how they're going to leverage whatever. Are they going to say, look, we'll take, we want to sell you 100 million barrels of oil. We'll release your U.S. person, but we're going to sell you some oil, or I don't know what they're going to do with all that. That's going to be a real issue. I did hear that the Colombians out of Latin America are helping the Ukrainians demine. Evidently, they're going over and they're actually holding demining courses so that you can demine those areas that the Russians have, especially in the eastern region, where they're doing those where they're doing mining, like just throwing down mines everywhere, especially in fields where you guys got to grow crops and are throwing down mines. So that's going to be a real issue. So anyways, that's my. I
Okay.
just heard that this morning. So I'm sorry. So sorry, Russia. Sasha, I probably didn't answer your question.
Okay, I'll provide my comments to what Ivan just told us. Why European Union would not consider Ukrainian membership, a candidate membership, 5 months ago, before the invasion started. They didn't do it. They did it now when Ukraine is now under the threat that it will not longer exist in 5 months. Now, the membership is into European Union is very stringent procedure, which may take 5 years long. It's very, very stringent. It's so many regulations. There are so many things that even Ukraine would not be in a war. It would take so many efforts and so much time to comply with. Now, when the country is at war and its existence is under question right now, let's understand exactly what's happening right now. Because the ability of Ukraine to defeat Russia is based on almost unlimited supply of Western heavy weapons. Now, if it's not happening at all, then Ukraine's situation is really tragic. I would go as far as to say that. Now, if it will be supplied in bits and pieces, it's not gonna make Ukraine to defeat Russia. It could help Ukraine to stand its ground. So it will be kind of a status quo, which there is now, but no more than that.
So Sasha, let's talk about this just for a second. First of all, Macron, the Italian prime minister, and the German prime minister, I can't remember the three. The what? Scholz, right. So they go over, right? Macron says, hey, we're going to get you guys in the European Union, right? He says there's going to be a roadmap. Do you know what the term roadmap means? That means there's going to be conditions. That means Macron didn't say there's going to be conditions, but roadmap is political speak for conditions. Now, why is Macron doing this? One is he does not have a majority in his own parliament, right? Le Pen is preventing him from having a majority. He needs a political win to be able to do what needs to be done within his area. I don't trust the French, never have trusted the French, and I definitely don't trust Macron. Now, I don't trust Le Pen less than Macron, but Macron I don't trust at all. So he's sitting there as if he's the head of the European Union. He's not the head of the European Union. France is not the head of the European Union, but yet he's like, here I am, I'm France and I'm going to do whatever I need to do. The reason they didn't do this, Sasha, 5 months before they got invaded was because the European Union, I'm not saying this. Chris Greco's not saying this. The European Union said this. They said they did not want Ukraine to be part of the European Union because they had so much corruption. Their corruption index was so high that they had to come down in the corruption index in order for Ukraine to join the European Union. So the European Union, by their own rules, would not allow Ukraine to join 5 months before the invasion. Now, all of a sudden, with what Ivan, half the country in shambles, I mean, if not more, probably 75% of the country literally is in shambles. Now they're saying, well, you know something? We're going to go ahead and we're going to push to make sure that you guys get into the European Union. Well, that's really nice. Is the European Union going to bail out Ukraine? Are they going to give them $500 billion so they can rebuild? I doubt it very much, especially Italy, Greece, the rest. They're going to sit there and say, we don't have the money to give Ukraine $500 billion. So basically, European Union is sitting back saying, we'll allow you in there. I think it's almost like a slap in the face of Ukraine. Like, oh, now that you guys are blistered to hell and back because you got some of your major cities are basically just nothing there. Now you can join the European Union because your corruption index is down because you have that many less people in the gosh darn country, So I mean, look, and I'm an American, right? I'm speaking from America, nice, safe America. We don't have any bombs bombing, hitting us or whatever else. So it's easy for me to come up with that. But that's the reason. I mean, I don't trust Macron. Now, if the head of the European Union went down there, If the head of the European Union went down and said, look, this is what we're going to do, I think I would trust that a lot more than Macron going down there when he needs a majority in parliament saying, hey, I need a political win. Can we please have Ukraine join European Union? That's the way I'm thinking.
Okay, I agree with you, Chris, and Ivan, please comment on that.
Please.
Yeah. Actually, first of all, I just wanted to say that the problem in corruption is not only in Ukraine, but maybe in some European Union countries as well, because they are some of their politicians they are supporting Russia and doing some business and some relations with Russia, despite the atrocities which they done in Ukraine, and they say that now that it's not obvious that it's Russia's war crimes. And why they're saying this? Why some German former politicians are being members of the boards of the Russian companies? And isn't it an act of corruption? And maybe they're just assisting Russia in taking their money and bringing them to some other present German politicians. We don't know. And when European countries are saying about the corruption in Ukraine, probably they have also to investigate some corruption in European countries, according to this strange position of European politicians.
Many European countries would be excluded now from European Union because of
because of corruption.
Absolutely.
And as for Ukraine, that actually this candidate status is not. It doesn't mean that they will accept Ukraine to the European Union like tomorrow. In couple
it will
months.
take 5 years or longer.
They've put a list of requirements which Ukraine have to complete in order to become the part of the European Union, and in this list, obviously, there are some requirements which covers the corruptional issues, some courts issues, the reformation of the police, etc. So it will take a long way, which Ukraine will have to go before actually being part of the European Union.
Okay, Ivan, I remember time when Poland joined European Union, because I was a shareholder in a business based in Warsaw. It was a food business. And I remember the regulations, what that factory had to go through before they would adhere to all European Union standards. It's horrible. It took years. But one interesting thing is that European Union provided loans and grants necessary to do all these investments. They did provide. I don't know if they are capable now to provide. I don't know if Ukraine would be on its way to join European Union. So Ukraine would be provided with necessary loans for business owners to change their standards, to adhere to European Union standards. And besides that, Ukraine will need hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of billions, probably $1 trillion to rebuild what all these dangers that what Russia created. But I want to tell now something very interesting. I've heard, and more from than one source, that Russians and Putin, historically Russians had very, very good intelligence. And they knew almost in details how much of each class of arms and weapons have each European country. I don't think that they had numbers on US, but on European Union countries, yes, they had. So they figured out that they have depleted arsenals of weapons, and that emboldened Putin to attack because he knew that it would be very limited supply. And that's exactly what we see happening now. Germans, they don't want to disarm themselves. So whatever they have to build will be ready only by the end of the year, maybe even later. Now, France, okay, this Caesar howitzer. How many France have those Caesar howitzers? What is the total? What is the minimum that they must keep to themselves? So the difference between the total and the supply that they must to keep themselves, that will be the number that they can supply Ukraine. Have Ukrainians done their job to assess each country what arsenal useful for Ukrainians they have, total arsenal, number of units needed to protect its country so they cannot move it, and number which is available. So I think that Ukraine, instead of saying, give us weapons, give us so many artillery, so many tanks, and so many this, they have to study how many units each country can provide and ask for about exactly that. Any comments?
Yeah, I think actually this job was done, and when we see some public requests for the weapons, like provide us 1,000 of artillery systems, it doesn't mean that they are not sent directly to the different countries with specific requests. As far as I know, such requests were set addressed to Germany, because our Ministry of Defense, they know the possibilities of the Germany, and they know what the amount of weapons, or what the amount of armored vehicles Germany has, and Germany can provide to Ukraine. But we will
Ivan,
also see.
hold on. We need to talk about two different numbers. Number one is the total inventory the German army possesses. Let's say tanks Leopard, for example. How many of tanks Leopard German army has right now? How many? What's the minimum of Leopard that they must keep that Germany would be defended against, just in case if Russia will go through Poland and attack Germany? It's a very unlikely situation, but still possible. Okay, so they must keep certain unit. So the difference between the total unit and the number of unit needed to defend, that's a number of unit, a maximum number of unit that Ukraine can request from Germany. Chris, is that correct?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what you're talking about, Sasha, is ground order of battle, what we call GOB. When we had a very, very good list of all Warsaw Pact and Soviet Union ground order of battle. As a matter of fact, every year we used to put out a book called the Soviet Power. And basically it talked about everything. It talked about tanks, weapons, new weapons, R&D, all this stuff. I mean, it was really, really a good book. And we would put it out with the help of the CIA and DIA and NSA and the rest of the alphabet soup. And you could tell exactly what the Soviets were doing in the way of R&D and the rest of those areas. So yeah, that's exactly right. You have to understand, how much do you need for domestic aspects? In other words, if you're invaded, how much do you need to be able to hold off an invading force? Right now, Ukraine never thought that they had to hold off an invading force. I mean, it was kind of like, hey, we're a sovereign country. The Russians know this. They messed around with Crimea, but we have enough that we're going to be able to do whatever we need to do to fend off an invading force. And the Russians just they overwhelmed Ukraine. And so, well, first of all, it was a surprise, right? I mean, there was not in my eyes, but in many other eyes, it's like, hey, this is what's going to happen. And I think then they underestimated the Ukrainians on their ability to fight back. So it was like, hey, we're gonna go in here and we're just gonna overwhelm them with force, and they're just gonna like lay down their arms. And the Ukrainians said, no, we're not gonna do that. As a matter of fact, we're gonna kill you, sons of guns, and we're gonna just continue to do that until you finally just leave our land alone. So I think if we were smart, and I'll tell you, Sasha, I'm gonna get off this just for a second, not get off of it, but actually build on your comments. If we were smart with Ukraine, and unfortunately, the U.S. is not very smart with Ukraine. And I'm going to show you how dumb we are in just a second. And this is really sad, but I'm going to show it to you. So basically, we would use Ukraine much like we use Germany when we had an exercise every year called Reforger, and it was called Return of Forces to Germany. And basically what we had was we left U.S. equipment there in Germany at different spots, and then we would come in, man that equipment, make sure it was maintained, whatever else, and then we would go out on exercises. We'd come back, we'd store the equipment again, and we'd take off back to the United States. It helped us to realize what the time frame is, how much are we talking about, all these different areas that helped us to be able to make that work. That's what I would do with Ukraine. I would make it literally a return of forces to Ukraine, and then I would bring the forces in, I would put them in storage, and then every year go to Ukraine, man those areas, take them on exercises with the Ukrainians, go back, and then go back to European bases or whatever you have. So you prevent that. You put up enough of a guard to be able to make that happen. But yeah, you're right into that, Sasha. You got to have enough tanks, in reserve, so that if those first level of tanks are taken out for whatever reason, you still have a reserve area to be able to go in and do it. It never needs to be done. What I want to do is I wanted to show this to Ivan, so he'll get a real big kick out of this. This is Google Trends, right? This is, so I put in a couple of areas like, where is Ukraine? This is 7 days. Okay. Wyoming is still a 53% of their searches are where is Ukraine. Now, this is really sad. This is where is Ukraine? I have also, is Ukraine part of NATO, and is Taiwan part of NATO? You can see the different states here. In Wyoming, 53% says where's NATO, 37% says is Ukraine part of NATO, and 10% say is Taiwan part of NATO. People don't even know where Ukraine is, and people don't even know where Taiwan is. I asked a military person. I said, why isn't Taiwan a part of NATO? They said, oh, China would be really upset about that. I said, no, it's because NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Taiwan is in the Pacific. And they go, a military person said, oh, well, they can't join NATO. What is we're talking basic stuff.
I want to bring up one more thing that's the reason I jumped in for Ivan. Okay. And this is military budget. Let's go take a look at it. The United States of America. We have $778 billion a year we spend on our military. Here's Russia's total budget per year, $61.7 billion. That's our total for their entire country. We can easily send you 10% of our budget. 90%, we're not even going to miss it. And this is one reason Russia, they can talk all the smack they want. They don't have a chance. China can talk all they want. You can add China and Russia together. They don't have what we have here in the United States. They don't want to hear it, but too bad, because I say that, what they do? They shut our shows off YouTube. But anyway, the thing is, this is a hard reality that the people in China and Russia just don't get. You are not big military as the United States is. You don't have a close to our budget, but this is the reality.
Nick, reality is that Russia put all their efforts, financial, human resources, the weapons production, everything is on the line for US. It's a kind of a nonsense. It's we have to do something about it. It's not nice. Another thing is that you forget, for example, blockade of Leningrad during the war,
right?
That Russians were surviving on 150 grams of bread. Americans cannot survive on 300 grams of bread or even a kilo. They need butter, they need meat, they need eggs, they need milk, and maybe a lot of other products that Russians don't need to survive. The other factor is, I've listened a couple of days ago, fantastic interview. Ivan, you probably know the name Mark Solonin. He's a very popular historian, and he was as a guest on Gordon's program. And there was a fantastic question. It was before the war actually started. The question was, how could Soviet Union survived the attack of Germans, that they were mobilized, they had superior army structure and techniques and everything else. Now, Hitler was aware that Russians could very simply to rebuild whatever tanks were destroyed and artillery units were destroyed. Millions of people were killed. They would bring more troops from Siberia, especially after Japan started Pearl Harbor. So obviously Japan wouldn't attack Soviet Union. So they had opportunity to bring a lot of arms from Asia. Now, but that's not the main question. Main question is, yes, Russian did supply a lot of tanks instead of those that were destroyed, and artillery and warplanes and so on. What killed Hitler was the sheer number. They would kill, say, 500 tanks. There were 5,000 new tanks coming to replace those 500. They would kill 1,000 of planes. There were 7,000 of planes almost in a week, 2 weeks' time. So the sheer numbers were devastating. Not that Russians were good fighters, absolutely not. Ukrainians were good fighters, not Russians. But the sheer number of weapons that they were able to produce was absolutely astonishing. And that is happening now. Russians are bringing they're not first rate weapons. It's not Caesar howitzer from France. No, not at all. They're weapons basically of Second World War, maybe 60s. That's the most modern weapons. The tank T-72. This is a 60s tank. But they were effective during the Second World War against Germans. So what's now? What would be the problem to make them effective against Ukraine, which also has most of the Soviet-produced arms and weapons, except that they're being exhausted now. Very soon, Ukraine will run out of all Soviet-produced weapons. So unless they will have sophisticated European and especially American weapons, they might as well give up. There will be no weapons to fight with. Ivan, any commentaries?
Yeah, I totally agree. And Russia, unfortunately, has a very huge amount of old Soviet weapons and armaments, which they're bringing from all the different military bases across all the country. And we see these videos with the trains bringing those old tanks and some old armored vehicles. And of course, they are not so effective against the modern weapons. And luckily, here in Ukraine, our soldiers have some modern weapons. But anyway, they require those modern weapons, like those javelins and those other stuff for being destroyed. So each old Soviet tank, which Russia has, require at least one javelin to destroy it. So
That's correct, but the tanks are no longer a factor in this war. They know already the problem with their tanks, and a lot of tanks were indeed destroyed by javelins. You're absolutely correct. So this is why Russians today, they avoid any direct contact with Ukrainian forces because they're losing this contact. So the Ukrainians
they're using artillery and they're using a lot of rocket artillery, and this is the problem Ukraine has, because most of our artillery is not NATO standards, not modern artillery, but the Soviet standards, and we are lack of ammunition, of ammo for this artillery.
Do we have a video?
Because before the invasion, we had some diversions on our several military bases and several military warehouses where those ammo was stored, and it actually were Russian diversions, and a lot of ammunition, a lot of ammo for this artillery was actually destroyed just in a couple of years before the invasion, and it's also a big problem. Yeah, I've got a very short video for today. Actually, I think it will be a good summary for our meeting, and I asked Nick to launch it.
Someone attacks, and someone defends. Someone seizes, and someone recaptures. Someone ruins, and someone rebuilds. Someone steals, and someone is given away. Someone rapes, and someone rescues. Someone kidnaps, and someone tries to take you to safety. Someone kills, and someone tries to save. There are times when it's immediately clear where evil is and where good is. Which side are you on?
Ivan, thank you very much for this video. Indeed, it's a battle of good against evil. And obviously, we are all on the side of the good. And hopefully, good will win finally. And with that, I would like to thank all participants of today's program. All the best, and I hope next week we are going to have a better news for you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, everybody.